The Connect kit comes in this box. Before starting, let's look at the 115H menu. Notice only the Schedule and Settings tabs can be found before adding the kit. The kit consists of the board, 2 ribbon cables, a manual, a guide, and 2 stickers. The shell on this mower has already been removed. To perform the upgrade, we will need to disassemble the unit to work on the upper chassis. To do so, we will need to remove the 12 screws and the height adjustment knob. The upper chassis can now be lifted. Be careful with the ribbon cable between the main board and HMI board. As you can see, all components are positioned on the anti-static mat. Don't forget to wear the anti-static bracelet to perform this operation. We will also need a T20 screwdriver. To perform this operation on the 115, we will need to use the long ribbon cable. The small one is to be used on the 310 and 315 mowers. The board will be mounted in this part of the upper chassis. There are 2 mounting points to hold it. What screws to use and where to add the washer are noted in the instruction manual. There is only one position for the board to be mounted. The hole with the slot on the board goes with the mounting point with a notch. Let's watch this procedure. Do not use any battery or air-powered tools to install and torque these screws. There is a passage available to bring the ribbon cable from the rear to the front of the upper chassis. 2 guides on the side. Place the ribbon cable inside the 2 guides. Please note that the sticker under the hatch has to be replaced. Also, one last point not shown in this video, is important to make sure that the 2 gasket seals are replaced when performing this operation. The most important part of the procedure is to come. We need to update the firmware. To do so, we will need to connect the Automower to AutoCheck 3 on our laptop using the USB cable. To find the USB port on a 115H, the battery hatch will need to be removed. As a tip, note that it's easiest to get access to the battery hatch by simply lowering the height of the cutting deck all the way to the bottom. The hatch is held on by 2 screws and 2 latches. Once the USB cable is plugged in here, we can now perform the update. Once the firmware is updated, we can see on the menu we now have a third option in the menu. We can now enter this menu and activate the Automower Connect. This unit is running into some problems. It keeps showing a charging status even when out of the charging station. When in the charging station, it does not want to pair with the charge station when creating a new loop signal. Before deciding to replace the main board, the unit was connected to AutoCheck 3. A firmware update and an auto test were performed, but unfortunately nothing helped with the mower's behavior. The main board has to be replaced. This is the operation we are going through now. Before starting, a good practice would be to take a picture of the board with all the connections. This will help when connecting all the sockets to the new main board. Disconnect all sockets, remove the 2 screws holding the board in place, replace the board, here's how it comes in the box. Reassemble the mower. Another good practice is to replace the gasket seal on the unit. Reconnect all the cables under the chassis, the charging cable, the ultrasonic cables, and the headlight cable. Be sure to plug the batteries in last. Since these connectors are to last, now that the unit's upside down, let's go ahead and plug in our USB cable to the computer. The next step is to update the firmware on the mower's main board. Plug in the USB cable on the laptop. Notice the only mower connected to the USB in it is the top of the list. The mower is not completely recognized since we just replaced the main board. The software is offering to transfer the last mower operating history. We'll choose this since the mower will stay in the same working zone. Be sure to set the serial number on the new board. Now back in the Home tab, click Update Firmware. This process does take some time. Now the software is asking me to re-enter the serial number. Once the firmware update is done, it is always a good practice to perform an auto test to confirm operation of all components. In this particular case, the problem is solved. The mower behaves as expected. The 435X front body is easy to disassemble and reassemble. Start in the front, put your fingers right above the headlights, and pull the top cover. The top cover holds in place with 8 clips. These clips can be removed and replaced from under the shell. Here are the two magnets for the collision and lift sensors, with a better view in this image. We will find in the shell 4 screws to remove the rear bumper, the 2 ultrasonic sensors, and the headlights. Before removing the shell, flip them over on its back and disconnect the headlight and ultrasonic sensors. Put the mower back on its wheels. Remove the rear bumper, then remove the snap locks from the joysticks on the body as found on previous platforms. There are 4 holding points. You can see the snap locks under the shell and the collision and lift magnets. To replace them, you just have to pull out on the plastic clips. Remove the screws holding the 2 bodies together. You will have to remove the warranty sticker and replace it with a new one to ensure warranty. Remove the HMI hatch cover. Don't forget to disconnect the switch plate from the front body. When this is done, the top front chassis can be lifted up, and 1 cable has to be disconnected from the mower circuit board. Inside the upper chassis, we can find the communication board held by 2 screws. Here's where the socket connects to the application board, the left and right collision and lift sensor boards. These boards are easy to remove and disconnect. There is only 1 screw holding them. On this technology, we can see the new type of connectors that are used. The mower uses a CAN communication system, which makes it faster and easier for components to communicate within the system. To reinstall, there is a locating pin on the chassis and a hole on the board. Match the 2, rotate the holder back in place, and screw the board onto the chassis. On this particular board, there are 2 connectors available. Any of the 2 can be used. Now for the lower chassis. Start by removing the cutter safety plate and disc. Back inside the lower chassis, we will remove the plastic holder. This holder maintains 3 boards in place: the loop receiver board, the ultrasonic board, and the main board. To remove the holder, first remove the screw, and then there is a spring clip that needs to be pulled. You can use your finger or a flat screwdriver to get the clip. Here's a view of the clip on the holder. On the lower chassis, we can see the 4 joysticks used for collision and lift. The joystick has a new design. There are no electronics in the component. It comes as a complete unit as a spare part. Here we see the cutting system, two wheel motors, the main board, the ultrasonic board, and loop sensor board. The loop sensor board comes with 3 sensors, and it is also connected by CAN bus. Now the front motor circuit board. This board contains the main cable to the rear chassis. The next slot goes to the upper front chassis. Either way you place the plugs does not matter since it's still using the CAN communication system. Then we find the left wheel motor, the cutting motor, the right motor, and the height adjustment motor, and lastly, the headlight cable. To remove the cutting system, we need to remove 6 screws holding the unit in place. There are 4 T20 screws and 2 size 4 Allen screws. To protect the internals from the front lower chassis, there is a sealing gasket which will have to be replaced. To remove the cutting unit, we will have to remove the grommets, which are placed under the gasket seal, and disconnect the cutting and height adjustment motor sockets from the main board. We are going to remove the upper chassis to make it easier, but you don't have to remove it to get to the HMI internals. You can see a magnet in the stop handle. This magnet works with a sensor placed on the HMI cover to indicate and activate the stop position of the unit. To remove the jog wheel, use the small opening in the rear of the HMI cover and pry slowly on the jog wheel with a small screwdriver. The button is a simple plastic part which has no particular function. All the functions are located within the encoder. To get to the HMI board, remove the 4 screws, unplug all sockets from the application board, the application board is held with 3 screws. Before removing the board, unplug the 2 cables. To remove the display ribbon cable, lift the black portion of the connector. Under the application board, we will find the LED diffuser, the 2.8-inch full-color display, which comes with a seal to protect against dirt and moisture getting into the area. We will also find the encoder. To remove the encoder, you will need an 11mm wrench. To reassemble, make sure the gasket seal is in place to protect from water intrusion. It is also important to mention that there is a seal gasket between the HMI cover and the front upper chassis. There is a method to avoid damaging the top cover when removing it from the body. You can place a towel between the body and the lift arm. The top cover holds in place with 2 notches and 2 metal inserts. You can see the 2 metal inserts on the top cover and the 2 magnets on the shell. Here are the magnets used for collision and lift in the rear. To remove the rear body from the link arm, first remove the link arm top cover. There are 2 holes in the switch plate. They go right to the link arm top cover clips. To remove the main cable, remove the plastic cable holder and pull out the socket. To remove the link arm from the rear body, use a 13mm socket. Then use the special tool listed in the workshop manual. Unsnap the 4 holding points. Then remove the charging cable from the upper chassis. On the shell, you will find the 4 snap locks, identical to the ones on the front shell. At this point, you could remove the front or rear bumper. This is the pivot arm. It allows the rotation and articulation of the rear of the mower. Once removed, you can see the O-rings and bushings. You can also see the magnet that communicates the position of the rear assembly. The main reason for the O-rings is to minimize the play between the pivoting arm and the support. If they are not in place, the first issue will be noise each time the mower changes direction. You can see the new type of joystick used on the front chassis as well. There's also a warranty sticker on the rear chassis. First, remove this plastic part. We can see the air filter right underneath this part. Here is the main cable, which has been tested for over 7 million turns. It makes it very durable. Now remove the screws to gain access to the upper and lower chassis. Two cables have to be disconnected. One cable is the main cable. The other one is the CAN cable going from the collision sensor and the lift sensor. On the upper rear chassis, we will find the two collision and lift sensor boards and the angle sensor board. These three boards are identical to the ones used on the front chassis. There is a specific path to connect them to each other. One of them has its own CAN bus cable connected to the main board. Note, it does not matter which one of the collision and lift sensor boards is connected to the main board. The main cable on the upper chassis can be easily removed by grabbing the grommet and pull it out. The Christmas tree holder has to also be removed. Cable routing is important and has to be respected. The cables have a designated position and make sure they don't disturb the loop sensor board. The main cable has to be placed like this. We would like to point out that the battery cables need to be held through the clips to avoid disturbance in the signals from the current flow in the mower. Remove the battery cables from the plastic clip and then remove the board's plastic holder. This is the same system we found in the front chassis. Here we see the cable coming from the battery, the main board, and the motor circuit board. The loop signal board and the CAN bus cable going from the main board to the loop signal board. Same wheel motors as found in the front chassis. The cable going to the charge plates, and finally the gasket seal. Let's talk about the lift arm assembly. Of course, it connects the rear unit to the front unit. It's made of magnesium to keep the total weight of the machine as low as possible. Underneath, we will find the switch plate. If the plate is pushed, the cutting disc will stop. Let's talk about the start-stop handle and how to disassemble it. Remove the two screws and the lower part of the handle. When the mower is lifted, it is actually held from the handle, and the two ears coming out are still part of the magnesium lift arm. Remove the other two screws. Flip the unit and pull the handle out. Remove the Christmas tree holder for the switch cable. On the upper handle, you will see the position spring and the start-stop magnet system. Now back to the switch plate. To get the switch cord, there are 4 screws to remove. Under the switch plate, you will find the switch cord. This cord works as a switch, so when it is pushed in, it triggers a safety component. All the motors stop functioning. In the link arm, we will find the main cable, which is maintained by a clamp and 2 screws.